Kenny Ducey is playing injured. He's a man. He continues to overcome adversity. Kenny, just really quick, just in case you're not your total self today, what is wrong with you, with your hand?
That's such a loaded question. Now we could have the whole segment and talk about what's wrong with me. No, I sliced my finger open. I need to get stitches on the knuckle connecting my index finger to my hand. It's a very tragic incident. I was just cleaning a knife and needed to walk across the street. Luckily, I live right across the street from a hospital to the hospital to get stitches.
We all know that is a hospital you bum their Wi-Fi off of for these shows.
Yep.
Well, anywho.
So that's baked into the cost.
T's and P's to you, my friend. It really sucks that we're not going to be able to play golf with you here in a couple weeks, but let's go ahead and get to NFL high or low here. Are these sportsbook lines too high or too low? One of the highest game totals right now is Cowboys-Chargers. You just heard Nick Eatman chatting about it a little bit. 54.5. Is that too high, Kenny?
I think that it's a little bit too high. The Chargers did a good job on defense last week. Of course, they had one of the more talked about bad defenses last year, blowing all those leads. And the Cowboys, while they are down there in DVOA from week one, I did feel like they played some semblance of defense against a very good Tampa Bay offense to keep the Dallas Cowboys in that football game. This is just a very, very high number in general, and I think it's a massive overreaction to a season where, we've seen the Cowboys for a few years now have a pretty terrible defense, and last year the Chargers were pretty bad. Even if just one of these defenses shows up, and LA's did last year, I think that we could definitely keep it under 55.5. It's a very, very high number for me, and I think it's worth taking a look at.
Okay, is it worth taking a look at, in your eyes, Reid, too high or too low?
Yeah, early money was coming in on the under, but DeMarcus Lawrence, he's not going to be in, so that does scare me a little bit in terms of what the Chargers are going to be able to do. But I'm with Kenny here. I think it is a little bit too high, probably a point too high. But look, and like the earlier segment, right? Like I love all of these pieces on the DFS side in this matchup. So yeah, can this go over? We've seen Dallas give up a ton of points. What we saw last season in their first 4 or 5 games, they just were in shootout after shootout after shootout. I do think that it is sort of a stay away in terms of over-under. But at the same time, if you wanted to, for this segment, I would say it's a little bit too high, but I'm a little tepid in saying that.
Okay, which side are you on here, Pearce?
I know it's a big number, but it's too low. Dak's last 5 games, the average total is 71 points. We're talking about 54. They're going to 71 routinely. And it's mainly because Dallas's defense is bad. They're held together by stitches. And so, it puts the offense in some pretty rough spots. And the offense has really had no trouble, scoring points. Plus, their offensive line is going to be healthier now that Zach Martin's back. I don't doubt the Cowboys' offense, and I don't doubt that the Chargers' offense can score against Dallas. So give me the over.
What do you want here, Pearce? Lowest game total right now, Patriots-Jets, 43. Too high or too low?
I think it's too low. Damian Harris is going to cut through this defense like a knife through Kenny's hand.
Ooh, this is amazing.
Here.
I was warned he was going to come out with puns all day. So
you are doing the Lord's work, Pearce.
So these defenses, I think, are a little bit overrated after last week. New England looked good, but I don't really have much faith in the Miami offense. With Tua, they're just not consistent. They're not proficient. And then obviously the Carolina offense has struggled for the last 2 seasons under their new offensive coordinator. They're not getting any better. So that's made these defenses look better than they are. And then on the flip side of that, you've got 2 rookie quarterbacks going into their second game. I don't foresee that there's going to be any developmental changes. But comfort level, there should be a huge step forward for these 2 quarterbacks. And also they'll be very aggressive. That should mean a lot more points.
All right, Kenny, how about you, dude?
Yeah, look, Pearce said aggressive, and that was a much different team in the second half of that game. The New York Jets, 14 points. Zach Wilson looked much more comfortable throwing the football. He was daring with the football all game long. And when you look at the numbers from last week, the Jets were 28th in rush play percentage. So that tells me that they are going to be throwing the football quite a bit now. This Russian defense is pretty good. This has been the last 2 years now. This is what the Jets are known for, what they're memed for, is only drafting defensive linemen, only drafting run stoppers. They don't build any of the rest of their team. So it's really the one thing that they can do well. And I think Damian Harris is a very good runner. I'm very high on him. But I do think that the Patriots would be wise here to throw the football a little bit more. They did run the 12th most last week. the Patriots. I think that we see a little bit more passing. You have to attack. The Jets came into the season with a secondary by committee. So I think you want to throw the football against these guys. You don't know who's back there starting to pass. I think that this will go over. I think it's going to be a very pass-happy game. And I think that it could be a fun shootout between two exciting young quarterbacks.
Okay, Reid, neither team scored more than 16 points in week 1.
Yeah, but kind of like last night, Emerson, when you see teams going on the under in those first weeks, it's an overreaction, right? It's an overreaction for both these teams. I'm with the guys here. I'm with, especially with Pearce with those puns, man. Amazing work here. I'm going over. And I think a big thing too, Kenny, is Mekhi Becton being out on the Jets line. That's going to hurt. And we see what it does, right, to the over-under. We see what it does to the spread, that when these key offensive linemen are out, and especially Amy's out for the year with a knee, with an ACL or an MCL, that's going to be tough. I do think that the Patriots do have the advantage here on the passing side. And I also think that we might see some points on the defensive side from the Patriots. And so I do like the over. I think this is too low.
Yeah, no question. Pearce is a cut above the rest.
Oh, I need to pick it up here.
3 games with a double-digit spread here. Houston, Cleveland, that's 12.5. Atlanta, Tampa Bay, 12.5. Detroit, Green Bay, 11.5. Any of these spreads too high, Reid?
Too high? I mean, maybe the Cleveland one, but saying that just gives me, it makes me queasy. Like if I saw the tendon of my finger after slicing it open.
Ooh.
That was terrible.
Yeah.
That was terrible.
My God.
Hit the fail stamp.
him.
Come on, Cody. Thank you. No, I think that one's probably too high. The one I like the most to cover, though, is the Green Bay one. I think with Cleveland, like which Cleveland team is going to come out, right? Like come out and perform. It's Houston. I know that. I get it. But we've seen Cleveland kind of play down to their competition. We don't see Tampa Bay doing that. Maybe again we see it gets them, it gets them a little to get going. But they showed no rust in week 1. Tampa Bay did, and Green Bay might be on a revenge tour after last week. So the Cleveland Browns maybe, but again, it's the Houston Texans.
What about you, Kenny?
Yeah, this is really weird. Cleveland was actually the team I looked at first. I do think that it's pretty funny. Like they have Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney now. So people just immediately assume like that's a really good defense. That's a really good team. Like, do we forget that the Chargers had Joey Bosa last year and still were a terrible defense? Like you can be terrible even with the good pass rush. So look at the Washington football team last night. So I do think that Houston, after a decent showing in week 1, they could certainly cover that spread. I think that's a few too many points, but I'm looking at this Detroit Green Bay game. Look, I know that, the Niners kind of let the foot off the gas pedal, but Detroit threw 57 times with Jared Goff, and he threw pretty well. He almost got up to 350 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick. This is an offense that looks surprisingly confident, and we know that Green Bay is not known for its defense. Even getting rid of Mike Pettin just really hasn't seemed to change much. So I think that the Detroit Lions could actually score some points here. I think they're not getting enough credit here, not getting enough respect with 11.5.
All right, well, Pearce, Browns favored by 12.5 against Houston. How about this? Should that line hold, it would be the largest spread in the Browns' favor since the franchise returned to Cleveland in 1999.
All the lines are right. These defenses are bleeding points, just like Kenny's finger. So,
yes.
I'm interested in Houston because Tyrod Taylor and Brandon Cooks, they complement each other. I'll talk more about that later in the game or later in the show, but those two alone aren't enough to cover this spread. And I disagree with Detroit. A lot of those numbers are garbage points against soft prevent defense. They're not going to be in that situation. I don't think they're going to be able to move the ball. Plus, Tyrell Williams is dealing with concussion protocol. DeAndre Swift didn't practice the other day, so I can't support any of these underdogs.
Sunday Night Football, gentlemen, Chiefs, Ravens. KC is favored by only 3.5 here after a close win. Is this spread too low after what we saw from both teams last week, Kenny?
I think it's a little bit too low. And I just look, here's the scary part about backing the Chiefs against the spread, right? They were not a good team against the spread last year, and they didn't cover in week 1 because they don't really seem to put the foot to the pedal here when it comes to putting their opponents to rest. I mean, I think that they kind of let opponents hang. That's why they had some shocking losses last year, like to the Raiders. And I think that when you look at this team, it's just a much better team than the Ravens. And the Ravens defense really disappointed me in week 1. I think that Lamar Jackson should have a good game here, but I think any time that you can get the Chiefs under 4 points, I think that that's probably a safe play. But I think anything over 4 points is generally a stay away from me, just because they do seem to play a lot of these close games. They're against the spread records pretty bad. And when you look at Andy Reid's game planning, at the end of these games, they're not looking to get an extra score, get an insurance score. They want to run as much clock as possible with CEH. So that's normally not a formula for a cover, but I think when you look at last year, what happened with these two teams, the Chiefs just absolutely blew the Ravens out of the water. I think that happens again here. They're going to be out for a vengeance here after last year getting disappointed in the Super Bowl. I think that they come out hot.
All right, Pearce, the Chiefs punked the Ravens of Baltimore last season.
I would imagine that the Chiefs will do the same thing. This number is too low. You look at last week, the Browns have a decent secondary, and they couldn't contain Tyreek Hill or the Chiefs. The Ravens, not necessarily a weakness, but they had an average secondary last season, and now you've got Marcus Peters is out. Jimmy Smith was questionable last week. He didn't play, may not play this week. Marlon Humphreys is questionable. Chris Westry is questionable. They have a starting defensive end that's probably not going to play. The linebacker might be out. There's a lot of problems on this Ravens defense, and we got a glimpse of that the other night when the Raiders had no problem scoring points. The Chiefs shouldn't have any problem scoring points. I'm out of puns, sorry.
Yeah, it's all good, man. That was the last question for you in this segment anyway. But Reid, bring us home here. Too high or too low, the spread?
I think this is too low. Look, I get what Kansas City, like their ATS numbers last year, and that kind of scares you a little bit, but they've had the Ravens number for quite some time. And if you take a look at what the Ravens did with the Raiders, they blitzed a ton. And Patrick Mahomes has a 93.3 PFF grade against the blitz since he's been in the NFL. That's the highest grade of any quarterback. And when you have Tyreek Hill, who had a good game last year against the Ravens, and you have Travis Kelce, who could get the Darren Waller type production, which I don't think so. I don't think you need to. I think this is a little too low. I think with the Baltimore Ravens, they this is sort of a critical moment for them, and going down 0-2 to begin the season is going to be pretty tough. But I think this is too low.